Watch this if everyone thinks you're fine. Carl Jung observed that the mask we perfect for the world can become so convincing that even we forget we put it on. Carl Jung wrote in his essay on the persona that the persona is that which in reality one is not, but which oneself, as well as others, think one is. That line comes straight from his collected works, Volume 9, Part 1, paragraph 221, and he would stop you right there and say, "Do you see it? The very praise you have been collecting, the compliments that you handle everything so well, the relief on other people's faces when they say you seem fine. None of that is proof of your wellness. It is only proof that the performance is convincing. And something in you has known this for a long time. Something in you has been waiting for someone to say it plainly. You are not the only one sitting behind a face that works better than the person wearing it. So let me say something quietly, just to you, not to everyone thinks you're fine, but to the one underneath who has been carrying it. I notice the face I show is not always the weather inside me. I notice how tired it is to be convincing. And I choose, starting now, to stop mistaking the mask for the man or the woman wearing it. Say it with me. I make the unconscious conscious. Again, I make the unconscious conscious. If something in you just went quiet reading that, if some old tired part of you sat up and listened, then type 2 words in the comments right now. Face it. Just those 2 words. Let them be your seal. Let them be proof that you heard this before you had time to talk yourself out of it. The first key is this. Everyone thinks you're fine is not a verdict on your soul, it is a review of your performance. And those are 2 entirely different things. Jung taught that every society requires what he called a persona, a mask negotiated between the individual and the world. The doctor needs the white coat and the composed voice. The mother needs the patience she does not always feel. The manager needs the steadiness that makes a room trust her. This is not lying. This is the ancient human art of fitting yourself to a role so that life among others can function at all. So when everyone thinks you're fine, understand what has actually happened. You have built a mask so well fitted that it does its job perfectly. The mistake is not in wearing it. The mistake is in believing the mask's success is your own report card. Imagine a woman who runs every family gathering, who remembers everyone's birthday, who never once lets her voice crack at the dinner table. And everyone says, "She is so strong, she has it together," and she nods and smiles, because the mask is doing exactly what it was built to do. It is convincing. But convincing was never the same thing as true. Think for a moment about what a review actually measures. A performance review at work tells you how well you handled the meetings, the deadlines, the difficult client. It does not tell you whether you slept that night, whether your chest was tight in the car afterward, whether you felt anything at all while you were being so competent. Everyone thinks you're fine is that same kind of review, only it is being conducted on your whole life instead of your quarter at the office. And here is the quiet trap inside it. When the review comes back glowing, we start treating the glowing review as if it were the truth of our condition. A student who aces every exam without understanding a word of the material still walks away with the grade. The grade is real. The understanding may not be. So ask yourself plainly, is what people see in UK, or the understanding? Is it the performance, or the person underneath performing it? This week, notice one moment where you performed fine rather than felt it. Just notice. Do not judge it. Notice too how automatic it was, how little thought it took, because that automatic quality is exactly what tells you the mask has been worn so long it now moves on its own. The mask is not the enemy here, forgetting that you are the one wearing it. That is where the trouble starts. And that trouble is what the next key opens straight into. I wear the mask, I do not become it. The second key is this. The danger was never the mask. Jung named the actual disease plainly. In his collected works, Volume 7, paragraph 307, he wrote of a man building an artificial personality without punishment, meaning you can wear the mask for years and pay nothing for it, right up until the day the mask and the man quietly become the same object. And notice the word without punishment. because that is the trap hiding inside the compliment. There is no bell that rings the first time you answer to your role instead of to yourself. No alarm sounds the day you start calling yourself fine out of habit rather than truth. The debt is silent, and silence is exactly what lets it grow so large before anyone notices it is there. Jung gave the clearest example in The Professor, who becomes so identified with his title that he cannot be spoken to as a man anymore, only as the chair he occupies, only as the textbook he has memorized. Take him out of the lecture hall and ask him a simple question about his own tiredness, and he will answer you with a footnote. Imagine instead a nurse who has answered every emergency call for 15 years without her hands ever shaking, where a patient could see them. Her colleagues call her the Rock, her family calls her unshakable, and she has worn that word so long that on her actual day off, sitting alone in her kitchen, she finds she does not know what to do with an ordinary feeling that has no patient attached to it, no chart to fill out, no crisis to steady. She reaches for competence the way another person reaches for a coat, except she has forgotten she ever took it off. Everyone thinks you're fine works this same quiet trick on smaller scales inside ordinary weeks. You play composed for so long at work that composed becomes the only voice available to you, even at your own kitchen table, on a Tuesday night, when nothing is actually wrong, except that you are tired and no one asked. You play unbothered for so long among your friends that unbothered becomes the only face you can locate, even alone in the car with the engine off, staring at nothing, waiting to feel something you can name. Jung understood this fracture from the inside long before he ever treated a patient for it. In Memories, Dreams, Reflections, he described his own boyhood split into what he called number 1 and number 2. Number 1 was the ordinary schoolboy, obedient, presentable, doing his lessons on time, and number 2 was the older, stranger part of him that felt kinship with centuries and knew things the schoolboy could never explain at the dinner table. Jung's insight was not that number 1 was false. The schoolboy was necessary. The schoolboy got him through his exams and into the world. His insight was that a person forgets number 2 exists at their own quiet cost. If only the schoolboy is ever allowed to answer for you. Something older in you starves in the back room, while the front room stays lit for visitors. So ask yourself honestly this week, when was the last time something other than your competent, presentable voice actually got to speak? Not to your co-workers, not even to your family, just to you, in a journal, in the car, in the shower with the water running so no one else can hear it. If you cannot remember the last time, that is not a failure, that is simply useful information the ledger has been keeping without you. I am the wearer, never the costume. The third key is this, and it is the one that explains why the collapse always seems to arrive out of nowhere, when it never actually does. Jung wrote of patients whose whole later life had been quietly financed by an unpaid debt to themselves. And the persona is exactly this kind of financing. Every time you perform fine, instead of feeling whatever you actually feel, the bill does not disappear. It goes onto a ledger somewhere beneath conscious sight, and ledgers, unlike people, do not forget. Think of it less like a single debt and more like a slow leak in a roof you have decided not to look at. Nothing falls today, nothing falls tomorrow. The ceiling looks exactly the same for years, and that is precisely what makes it so easy to trust. Imagine a man everyone in his company calls the strong one, the one who never took a sick day in 30 years, who mentored everyone, who solved every crisis with a steady hand, and then he retires, and within 8 months, he is unrecognizable to his own family, restless, hollow, furious at nothing in particular, and everyone is baffled, they say. But he had it all together. He was fine. And that is exactly the trap. He was never fine. He was financed. The persona had been drawing on a reserve of unlived feeling for 3 decades and calling it strength. And the moment the role disappeared, the invoice came due all at once. But notice something else in that story. The collapse did not begin the week he retired. It began 30 years earlier, in 1,000 small refusals, so quiet he never once noticed making them. That is the part people miss. They look for the dramatic cause, and there isn't one. There is only accumulation. Let's walk through an ordinary day, the way this actually happens. Because it is never dramatic. It is small. Morning, you wake tired, and you tell the mirror you are fine, because the day requires it. Mid-morning, a colleague says something that stings, and you laugh it off, because reacting would cost you the fine reputation. Lunch, you check on a friend who is struggling, and you never mention that you are struggling too, because the role has become listener, not spoken to. Afternoon, a decision exhausts you, and you make it crisply anyway, because that is what competent people do. Evening, someone says, you always seem to have it together, and something in your chest tightens for half a second, and you smile and say, oh, you know me, and that half second, that tiny tightening, that was the ledger being written into again. And here is the part worth sitting with. The same entry gets made on weekends too, at the holiday table where you carve the turkey and swallow the comment that hurt you. At the funeral where you comfort 3 other people and cry alone in the car afterward. At the anniversary dinner where you say everything is wonderful because saying otherwise would ruin the evening for everyone but you. None of it looks like harm on any single day, but stack 3,000 of those days, and you have exactly the businessman, in his 8th month of retirement, wondering who he is, without an office to walk into. Or the woman running the family gathering, who one ordinary Tuesday finds she cannot get out of bed, and cannot say why. Jung's teaching here is not dramatic either. It is simply this. Feeling that is never let through eventually collects somewhere, and it does not politely wait for a convenient decade. It does not ask whether you are ready. It arrives the way weather arrives, indifferent to your calendar. Notice this week if you can find even one moment where the tightening happened and you smiled anyway. Just find it. Do not fix it yet, only find it. Because finding it is how the ledger finally gets read instead of only written. I let the tired one speak before she breaks. The 4th key is this, and it is the difference that actually protects you. The persona is not a fixed enemy. It is a tool, and every tool becomes dangerous only when you stop being able to put it down. Jung's own phrase was precise. The persona is that which in reality one is not. Notice the phrasing. It does not say the persona is bad. It says the persona is not you. That is a clean, almost merciful distinction. Once you actually sit with it, you are allowed to be composed at work and unraveled at home. You are allowed to be the strong one for your children and the exhausted one to yourself in the bathroom mirror at 11 at night. The trouble only begins the moment you cannot tell which one is currently speaking. Imagine a father standing at a backyard barbecue, flipping burgers, laughing at his brother-in-law's joke, telling the neighbor everything is going great with the new job. And none of it is untrue exactly. It is simply the coat he put on the moment he walked out the back door. And later that same night, folding laundry alone, his shoulders drop and his face changes, and something quieter and more tired comes up to the surface. That is not a contradiction. That is a man who still knows the difference between the coat and the man wearing it. The danger was never the barbecue face. The danger would only begin if he forgot the laundry room face existed at all. So here is a small practice. Call it a mask census. Take one evening this week and simply list the roles you occupy. The competent one at work, the reliable one in your family, the unbothered one among your friends, the strong one for your children. Write each one down plainly, and beside each, write honestly whether you have ever let anyone see underneath it. Not everyone, just anyone. One person. This is not an exercise in exposing yourself to the world. It is an exercise in knowing your own furniture, in knowing which room you are currently standing in. Because a person who knows I am wearing the reliable one right now is free in a way the person who has forgotten there is a difference is not. Think of it like a closet full of coats, each one useful for its own weather. The mistake is never owning many coats. The mistake is sleeping in one because you forgot you own a closet at all. Everyone thinks you're fine can be worn consciously, deliberately, like a coat you chose this morning, or it can be worn the way a man forgets he ever took his coat off 30 years ago. One of these is a tool. the other is a slow disappearance. And the only thing standing between them is this small, ordinary habit of naming, out loud or on paper, which face is currently on. I name the mask so it does not name me. If this teaching is finding you at the right moment, consider staying close for the next one, subscribe quietly, and let the next key find you when you need it. The fifth key is this, and it asks more of you than the ones before it, so let's take it slowly, in pieces, because this is the deepest room in the house we have been building all night. First, consider what Jung meant when he said an artificial personality can be built without punishment. He did not mean without consequence. He meant without immediate consequence. The punishment is deferred. It accrues quietly like interest on a debt you forgot you signed for. And this is precisely why everyone thinks you're fine, feels, on the surface, like a compliment worth protecting. Of course you want to keep it. It costs you nothing today. Imagine a woman who has answered phones at the same company desk for 11 years, patient with every furious customer, calm through every complaint, the one everyone calls a professional, unshakable, and every single day, several times a day, she swallows the sting of being spoken to badly and files it away as part of the job. No one punishes her for this. There is no single moment where the bill arrives with a knock at the door, and that is exactly the danger, because 11 years of swallowed stings do not vanish. They do not forgive themselves for being unfelt. They simply wait, layered one on top of another, until one ordinary Tuesday, a small thing, a rude word from a stranger, no worse than any other, breaks something in her that has nothing to do with that one moment, and everything to do with 4,000 moments before it that were never allowed to register as real. Jung's whole clinical life was built around watching this exact pattern. A function performed instead of lived does not strengthen with use, it hollows. Second, consider the layering itself, because the mask is never singular. You are not wearing one face, you are wearing several nested inside one another, like the gold house before you. Many windows, only one kept lit for the neighbors to see. At work you wear competent, inside competent you wear friendly, inside friendly you wear easygoing. And by the time you are finally alone at night, you have worn so many masks, stacked one over another, that finding your actual face underneath takes real, patient, unglamorous excavation. This is what Jung meant by his own private split between number one, the presentable schoolboy who did his lessons and pleased his teachers, and number two, the older, stranger self who felt kinship with centuries and could not explain himself at the dinner table. Jung did not solve this by discarding number one. He could not have lived in the world without him. He solved it by insisting, quietly, privately, that number two be given a room of his own too. Somewhere that older, less presentable self could speak without needing anyone's approval first. And this is the real practice folded inside this key. Not the abolishing of every mask you own, but the keeping of one room in the house that stays lit for you alone. A journal no one else reads, a walk with no one else's opinions inside it, 10 minutes before sleep where you ask yourself honestly, not everyone else, just yourself, how are you actually? And you let the answer be whatever it truthfully is, even if the answer is, I don't fully know tonight. Third, picture this same layering in a much smaller, much more ordinary body than a woman at a switchboard, or a boy split between two selves in a memoir. Picture a young man at his own family's holiday table, wearing pleasant for his grandmother, because she worries easily, wearing confident for his father, because his father only knows how to talk to confidence, wearing easygoing for his siblings, because easygoing keeps the peace between them, and underneath pleasant and confident and easygoing, something tired that none of the three masks were ever built to carry. And here is what matters. None of those three masks are dishonest. He does love his grandmother. He does want his father's respect. He does want peace with his siblings. The masks are not lies. They are simply not the whole of him. And the danger was never the holiday table. The danger is if he drives home afterward and reaches for pleasant again, because he has forgotten there was ever anything underneath it to reach for instead. This is the excavation Jung meant. Not a single dramatic unveiling, but a small, repeated, patient act of remembering there is a flaw beneath the floor. Fourth, and here the key turns darker before it turns back toward warmth. Consider the cost of never building that private room at all. A house with every window dark, but one convincing porch light, is not a home. It is a facade, with a family standing behind it, hoping no one ever asks to come inside. Think of a father who spent 30 years being the calm one during every emergency, the one who never raised his voice, who solved every crisis in the family with the same even tone. And think of the evening his grown children sat around him and realized none of them had ever once heard what actually frightened him. Not because he was hiding something shameful, but because the room where he might have said it had simply never been built. There was nowhere for it to be said, and by then even he had forgotten the way there. This is not a warning meant to frighten you. It is meant to be useful, plainly useful, the way a lit window in a dark house is useful to the person still standing outside it in the cold. Fifth, and this piece matters as much as the others, do not mistake this teaching for a call to tear the whole house down at once and parade around with every door flung open. That too becomes a performance, a newer, louder mask that simply calls itself honesty. Jung never taught the abolishing of the persona, he taught its conscious use. One lit room is not the same as no walls at all. You do not owe your unfiltered insides to your co-workers or your extended family or the stranger at the checkout. The steady voice your team relies on can remain steady. The composed face your children lean on can remain composed. What changes is only this: privately, quietly, you keep one door in that house that you alone hold the key to, and you use it, not to perform there either, but simply to sit, honestly, unwatched, for however many minutes you can spare. And notice this room does not need to be dramatic to do its work. It does not require a confession, a breakdown, a grand revelation written in a journal with trembling hands. Most nights it will only be 5 honest minutes. A single true sentence said to no one. Today was heavier than I let on, or I do not actually know how I feel about this. And that is enough. The room does its work simply by staying lit, not by being furnished with anything grand, because that one lit room is not indulgence, and it is not weakness. It is the very thing that keeps the whole house standing upright when everyone out on the street still thinks you're fine, and something quieter in you knows there is more going on than fine. I keep one room lit for myself alone. The sixth key is this, and it is the gentlest one, so let it land gently. The goal was never to walk around without any mask at all. That is neither possible nor wise. Jung never taught the dissolving of the persona, he taught its conscious use. And conscious use is a very specific, very practical thing. Not a philosophy you admire from a distance, but a small motion you actually make with your hands. Imagine a nurse finishing a 12-hour shift. All day she has worn calm, the way other people wear a uniform. Steady voice at the bedside, steady hands during the hard parts, steady face for frightened families. And this is good. This is needed. No one is asking her to abandon that face on the hospital floor. But notice what she does at her own front door. She takes off her badge, she takes off her lanyard, she stands there for 1 full minute before she turns the key. And in that minute she is not performing calm for anyone. She is simply standing in her own skin, letting whatever the day actually left in her arrive. That minute is the whole teaching, not the badge coming off. Anyone can remove a badge, but the choosing to stand there and feel whatever is true before stepping back into the house, that is the conscious use Jung meant. The coat comes off with relief, not with guilt, and it goes back on tomorrow morning with intention, not with dread. Now widen this same small motion across an ordinary week, and you will see it everywhere once you know to look. The father who coaches his daughter's team all Saturday morning. Patient, encouraging, never once raising his voice at a bad call, and then sits alone in his car in the driveway for 4 minutes before going inside. not scrolling anything, not rehearsing anything, just letting his shoulders drop before he becomes father and husband again at the kitchen table. Those 4 minutes are not wasted time. They are the room with the light on, the teacher who is endlessly patient with 30 children all day, and who, walking to her own car in the empty parking lot, allows her face to simply be tired for the length of that walk. That walk is the room with the light on. None of this requires an announcement. None of this requires telling a single other person what you are doing. That is precisely what makes it sustainable. A light kept on quietly does not need an audience to remain real. Everyone thinks you're fine can remain entirely true in the ordinary sense. Your co-workers can keep trusting your steadiness. Your children can keep leaning on your calm. Your friends can keep coming to you because you are the reliable one. None of that has to end, and none of it should. What changes is only this. Quietly, privately, you know the difference between the coat and the person wearing it. You know there is a door in the house that leads to a room where the lights are still on, and you actually walk through it, not for anyone's approval, not as a reward you have earned, simply because it is yours and it was always yours. And here is the last honest thing worth saying about this. The room does not need to be large. It does not need to be a whole evening, or a long journal entry, or a dramatic reckoning. It can be 4 minutes in a parked car, 1 minute at a front door, 10 minutes before sleep, with the lamp off, and the day finally allowed to be whatever it actually was. Jung's teaching here was never about grand gestures. It was patient, almost domestic. Wear the mask well, hang it up honestly, stand for 1 minute in your own skin before you decide what face comes next, and keep one small light burning behind the door for no one but yourself, because a house with every window dark but one convincing porch light is not a home, and a house with one small window kept honestly lit, even for 4 minutes a day, is exactly that, a home. I choose my face. My face does not choose me. Here is the whole picture. The mask is a tool, not a verdict. Identifying with the tool is the actual disease. Every unfelt feeling collects quietly and calls itself strength until the bill arrives. Naming your own masks keeps you the one wearing them. One lit room kept for yourself alone is what lets the whole house stand. And the mask well hung by the door each night is not a loss of self. It is the beginning of keeping one. And if you look closely at all 6 of these, you will notice they were never 6 separate teachings at all. They were one single turning of one single key, the recognition that you are not the face people see, you are the one who put it on this morning and can, with practice, learn to take it off with your own 2 hands. So if everyone still thinks you're fine tomorrow, let them. That is not a lie you are telling them. It is simply a coat, doing its ordinary work in the world. But tonight, in whatever quiet corner belongs to you alone, ask the other question, the private one. Not are you fine, but are you home? And I return to that quiet center now. The unconscious becomes conscious the moment I stop performing it and start actually living it, and it stands there, patient, waiting, the way it always has. So the mask stays useful, the room stays lit, and the only question worth carrying with you when this ends is the one no one else ever gets to hear you ask. When everyone else thinks you're fine, what do you think?